Imagine you are walking down a well-worn trail in the heart of the bush. The sun is just starting to dip below the horizon, but the light is still plenty strong enough to see. You can see your young son's back as he trots ahead of you just 10 yards away. He rounds a massive boulder and disappears from view for just a split second. You take 5 brisk steps to catch up and round that same corner, but the trail is empty. There is no sound of running feet and no rustling of the dry scrub brush. Most importantly, there is no cry for help. You call out his name once, then 10 times, then 100 times, until your throat is raw. The only response you get is a silence so heavy it feels like a physical weight pressing against your chest. This is not a normal silence. It is as if a thick curtain has been pulled over the world. Welcome back to the program. I am David Paulides. For over a decade, my team and I have been documenting a very specific and disturbing pattern of disappearances. We call it Missing 411. Today, we are stepping away from the North American forests and heading to a land that is often described as beautiful but harsh. I am talking about the Australian Outback. People tell you the Outback is dangerous because of the heat or the snakes. They talk about the vastness and the lack of water as the primary killers. But after thousands of hours researching the Australian files, I am starting to wonder, is the harshness of the land just a convenient cover story? Is it being used to hide something that sits right outside our understanding of reality? I am just stating the facts. When I began looking at the data from Australia, I was honestly shocked at what I found. The clusters of missing people in places like the Blue Mountains mirror our North American cases almost perfectly. These people aren't just getting lost. They are vanishing under circumstances that defy every law of tracking and logic. The authorities have a simple answer for everything, but they are not looking at the profile points. Let us go back to 1,987 inches, a place called Wilson's Promontory in Victoria. This is a very popular spot for hikers and is generally considered safe for families. A 9-year-old boy named Paddy Hildebrand was out for a walk with his parents. Paddy was a healthy and energetic kid who knew not to wander off. He was simply enjoying the day. Then the unthinkable happened. Paddy ran just a few meters ahead of the group on a clear and level path. His family was less than 20 meters behind him at all times. When he rounded a slight bend in the trail, he simply evaporated. Think about the logic of that for a moment. To vanish in 10 seconds without a sound. A child would have to be moving at the speed of a race car, or he would have to be lifted. What followed was one of the largest searches in the history of the state of Victoria. Hundreds of volunteers and high-tech thermal helicopters covered every inch. This brings us to profile point number 1. The K9 units. When the handlers brought the dogs to the spot where Paddy was last seen, the dogs refused to work. They didn't bark or hunt for a scent. They just sat down and shivered. Why would an expert tracking dog refuse to follow a fresh trail? These dogs are trained to find the living and the dead alike, but they cannot track what is not there. The searchers found absolutely nothing. No clothing, no footprints, and no remains. It is as if Paddy Hildebrand stepped through a door that closed behind him, and the world just kept on turning. Now let us shift our focus across the continent to Western Australia in 2015. Ray and Jenny Kehlets were not tourists. They were experienced gold prospectors. They knew the sandstone area like the back of their own hands. They were out in the field with a friend when things went sideways. Ray's body was eventually found at the bottom of a deep mine shaft. The police were very quick to call it a tragic accident. But what about his wife, Jenny? She vanished without a single trace. No DNA was found and no scraps of clothing were ever recovered. Their dog was found wandering miles away in a state of sheer terror. The dog survived. But it could not tell the searchers what it had seen out there in the silence. Here is where we see profile point number 2. The weather. In so many of these cases, a freak weather event occurs immediately after the person goes missing. In the Kehlets case, a massive dust storm blew through the region right as the search began. This effectively scrubbed the landscape clean of any evidence. It happens too often to be a coincidence. And the Park Service knows it. I am often accused of being a conspiracy theorist. But I am an investigator. I look at the hard data. In these Australian cases, there is a recurring theme of granite and quartz. These minerals have piezoelectric properties that can actually interfere with electronics. People disappear in these high granite areas far more often than statistics should allow. And we need to ask why. When survivors are found, they are often in a state of temporary psychosis. They cannot remember where they have been or how they got there. We often find their shoes and socks neatly folded miles away from their last known position. The authorities say it is paradoxical, undressing from the heat. But that doesn't explain how they crossed miles of jagged rock in their bare feet without a scratch. We need to talk about something that most people are too afraid to mention. If it isn't an animal and it isn't a human predator, then what is it? If you look at the ancient stories of the Aboriginal people, they speak of entities that are not of this world. They describe beings that can sing a person into a different state of existence. Maybe they were right all along. I want you to seriously consider the theory of invisible entities. Many witnesses who barely escaped describe a shimmer in the air. It looks like the heat haze coming off a highway, but it has a distinct shape and movement. These things seem to operate on a frequency just outside of our vision. This explains why the dogs are terrified and why there are no tracks. They don't walk. They glide. If there is something out there that can cloak itself, it would have no trouble picking someone off in the few seconds they are out of sight. This isn't science fiction. It is a desperate attempt to explain what the traditional sciences are ignoring. There are holes in our reality. And the vast silence of the Outback is where these holes seem to open up the widest. The Australian Outback is a beautiful place. But it demands a level of respect that most people aren't prepared to give. If you go out there, please do not go alone. Carry a satellite beacon at all times. Even if you only plan to step away from the group for 5 minutes. Your life may literally depend on it. If you are ever in the bush and the birds suddenly stop chirping, if the insects go quiet and the air feels heavy and cold, do not stop to take a photo. Do not look back. Run as fast as you can toward the nearest sign of civilization. Something is likely watching you from the shimmer, and it doesn't want to be seen. I am going to keep digging into these files. I am going to keep pushing the authorities for the answers they are hiding. I am David Paulides, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to these facts. Please share this video with anyone you know who spends time in the wild. Stay safe and keep your eyes on the trail.